There's one important exception to this rule that raises mean more than bets. Most people know that when you're in late position and you have a drawing hand, you should often raise to try for a free card. So don't necessarily take raises in late position as seriously as you would a check raise or a raise from a person in middle position. Let's try a more complicated second example of this principle. 3 players limp, the small blind calls, and the big blind checks. We're not going to tell you what anyone has just yet. You have to figure that out. The flop is Jack of hearts, 8 of hearts, 5 of spades. Small blind checks, the big blind bets, the first limper calls. The second limper raises. Well, what kind of hands would the big blind have? He could have lots of things. Remember, people bet lots of hands. He could have any pair, a jack, an 8, or a 5. He could have a flush draw with 2 hearts. He could possibly have a straight draw, particularly an open-ended one, like 10-9 or 7-6. And sometimes he might even have just ace-high, like ace-10, and again be taking a shot at the pot. What could the caller have? Well, if he's a typical caller, that is a loose one, he could have all sorts of hands, including all the ones that the bettor might bet with. Except it's slightly less likely that he has the better hands, like a jack, and he's particularly unlikely to have an even better hand like 2 pair or a set. So he probably has a relatively low range of hands, maybe a smaller pair, an 8 or a 5, flush draw, straight draw, gut shot, overcards, something like that. What does the raiser have? Remember, raises mean more than bets, so you can probably narrow his range of hands down to a much smaller set. He probably has a jack, at least a jack, he might have even better. If he doesn't have a jack, he probably has at least a strong draw, like a flush draw or an open-ended straight draw. In any event, the fact that he's raised is a serious warning sign. He probably has a strong hand. Now we're going to learn a similar principle, but one that's actually correct even more often. Remember, none of these principles are ironclad. People play different ways. These are just general ideas, general rules that seem consistent with the way many players play. The last principle was that bets don't necessarily mean a whole lot.